Welcome to the Tourpreneur Podcast. Travel industry veteran Shane Whaley will take you on a journey with fellow tourpreneurs, sharing their tips, ideas, insights, and success stories to inspire you to make your tour business the best it can be. And now, please welcome your host, Shane.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Tourpreneur Podcast. Today, we are talking with the tourpreneur behind the Battlefield Explorer tours. We're going to learn how he turned his passion for military history into a thriving tour business. Now, don't worry, if you're not into World War II history, you're still going to get a lot out of today's show, okay? The last episode we ran was all about ghost tours. And you may not be into ghosts, goblins, ghouls, and Ouija boards, but I'm pretty sure you learned a lot from Mike's journey as a tourpreneur. It's going to be the same today with episode 5 of the Tourpreneur Podcast. Joris Nieuwint from the Netherlands shares with us how he got started, what were his first steps, why he's so passionate about his subject, why we should know our audience, especially if you're leading a history tour, why it's important to be on good terms with your competitors. He shares with us how he goes about his marketing and promotes his tours. Now, he also has a YouTube channel. If you remember our last episode, Mike had a podcast. Today's guest, Joris, has a YouTube channel. He shares with us what equipment he uses, gives us some general tips as well about video and YouTube channel. And that's a subject I do want to dig into on further episodes. He also talks through his decision, his very recent decision of working with FareHarbor. Until recently, he built his own website, managed his own website, took his own reservations, but now he's looking to FareHarbor to become more efficient in terms of his time management, and he talks through that with us. So as I say, this isn't an episode about the military history of Operation Market Garden, but I do want to dedicate this episode to all those who fought and died at Operation Market Garden. There were huge casualties in that battle. It was the Allies' attempt to end the war by Christmas 1944 and was unsuccessful. And we wouldn't have the freedoms we have today if it wasn't for those brave men and women. I also want to pay my respects to the Dutch people who had a really rough time during those years. Moving on to something a little lighter. This week, I am jetting off to Berlin. I'm going to Deutschland because it's the first ever arrival event held outside of the United States. And I've been very honored. Douglas and his team have asked me if I would host a panel. And I will be hosting one on the Tuesday at 4:35 p.m. Berlin time, titled The Tour Operator of the Future. That promises to be a fun one. So please do come along to that. It'd be great to see you. And if you see me at the event, I don't think you can miss me. I'll have my mic flag. You'll see me doing interviews. Do come over and say hello. I love meeting our listeners, and please do come and share your feedback with me about how you're enjoying Tourpreneur so far. I'm intending on my goal really at arrival is to, after every session, to do some vox pops, go up to delegates and ask them what they learned, what they want to implement in their business as a result of the session they've been to, how they're finding arrival overall. So for those of you who are unable to make it, I can bring a little bit of it back to you on the podcast. So without further ado, let's join Joris Nieuwint of the Battlefield Explorer Tours. Welcome to Tourpreneur, Joris. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm really excited to talk to you because I have to declare to our listeners that your tours, your subject matter are an area of history that's fascinated me since I want to say early teens, having watched the movie A Bridge Too Far I was fascinated with Operation Market Garden, read up as much as I could about it. So to get to speak to someone who lives in that area and gives tours as the battlefield explorer, I'm really excited to talk to you. And I must, be careful that I don't get too much into the history here and bore everybody. But I'm curious to know, so what led you to starting out as a tour guide for the battlefield explorer?
Well, always been very much interested in World War II history, of course. And then I lived in Arnhem for quite a while, and I started to look up all the locations where things happened. And I got really excited about it all. And then I invited my friends to come over, and I would take them on tours. And then every time we drove around somewhere, I would point out stuff. And they would say, you should be a battlefield guide. And I would say, no, that's far too difficult for me. It's the professionals do that. And they kept insisting. And at some point, I just took the plunge and decided to try and see where it ended.
No, absolutely not. And I can see by your TripAdvisor reviews that you are very well regarded. You have some wonderful feedback on TripAdvisor.
Yeah, very happy with that, of course. Yeah. It's always a bit scary to ask people for feedback.
Yes.
But it's the best. And usually you know how a tour went during a tour. So it's great feedback for everybody, for yourself, but also for people who might be interested in booking a tour.
So can you share with us your first steps? So your friends are saying, hey, you've got all this knowledge, you should be a tour guide. What were your first steps then, going from an amateur tour guide with friends and family to doing this professionally?
My first step was create a website and promote myself and put out notices on Facebook to all my friends and family, and just let them know that I was doing this. Just get the word out. The most annoying, most difficult thing is to wait for your first customer. Yeah. Because you've got everything sorted, and then it's just a waiting game, and you never know when that first email hits your inbox, and then that's when you're off. And then in the meantime, you prepare what you want to say, what's the main points, what's the story that you're going to tell, what are the main focus points of a day, and collect pictures, lots and lots of pictures.
Do you remember where your first guest came from? Which source they came from, how they found you?
Well, they actually found me online on my Facebook page. Yeah. And he was from America. Uh-huh. And he was now let me think about that one. He was an air marshal.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that was pretty awesome to talk to, because that's the beauty of these tours, is you get to spend the day with people who are, of course, generally interested in the subject matter, but at the same time you're digging into their world as well, and talking about what they do and what drives them to take this tour, and what keeps them busy. And it's a beautiful way to meet new people.
Yes. Yeah, especially with that joint interest. And kudos to you that he was able to find you on Facebook. Was that, a deliberate policy on your part? Did you get any advice on how to optimize your Facebook page, or was it sheer chance?
I had a fair bit of experience with Facebook in one of my jobs, and that allowed me to build my page quicker. And it was in the old days, the 2012. Yeah. Facebook was a different world then. You got far more reach out of any post that you make than you do now.
Yes.
So it was easier in a way.
Is there a top tip that you would say to someone that they must absolutely do if they want to promote their tour via Facebook?
Yes, it's post on a regular basis, be responsive to comments and especially messages, incoming messages as well. And be passionate about what you do and why you post. There's no point in posting something that's quick and dirty. People will know that. People will see that it's just something to dump in there. And don't promote your tours too much. Just make it a brand page where's my page is. I just post pictures of the stuff I visited, battlefield locations all over Europe, where I've been over the last 15, 20 years, and just to add some info, some context to it, and people respond to that very well.
Are you using Facebook ads at all, or is this pure organic traffic?
Pure organic traffic, yes.
Well, we'll get a little bit more into marketing a little later in the interview. A question that I had for you. So Battlefield Tours, when I look at this now, so you started in 2012, and a quick glance at your page at the battlefieldexplorer.com shows you are currently offering 7 different tours. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you start off offering 7 tours, or was it a custom tour, or how did that look for you in the early days?
Well, I had a lucky break where it's that I used to live in Arnhem, and then I moved to Veghel, where I am now. And when you live somewhere and you breathe the air, and when you go out, you can discover new things. That made it far easier to learn the whole story. Because the 101st Airborne area where I live now is totally different from the 82nd Airborne. It's totally different from the 1st Airborne. These are the 3 main airborne divisions involved in the operation. And having lived in Arnhem for quite a while, you get to know the lay of the land, you know where things are and how they relate to each other. And then I moved to Veghel, and I got to do that all over again, that whole new journey, the whole discovery of the area. And that really helped me to put things in place, because you do need to not just know the history, but you need to know where it happened and why it mattered. And you can't get that from just visiting a place once or twice and then believing you can do a full service battlefield tour.
Looking at your tours here, I mean, I feel spoilt for choice. Arnhem, A Bridge Too Far Battlefield Tour would probably be up there for me. But, we were talking offline, I'm a war gamer on tabletops, and I'm playing Holland 44. And I would be a terrible leader because I opened that game 2 weeks before Christmas, and I haven't even made it to Eindhoven yet. So I am no Brian Horrocks for sure, but it's fun. But I'm learning so much history through playing this game because it's very realistic. Like I say, Veghel is on there. So you taught me how to pronounce that properly. I've been calling it Veghel. Veghel. There we go.
Yes.
Dutch today. Dutch lesson. So when I see the 30 core breakout battlefield tour, I'm like, oh, now that looks interesting to me because that's a part of the game I've been playing. So you're offering the full compliment here. It's not just, some people think it was just about Arnhem and the bridge, but there is so much more, Hell's Highway and the whole road up to Arnhem. You really, for enthusiasts, it's great that you're covering so much of Operation Market Garden.
Yeah, and of course it was a fully integrated operation where the things that happened in Veghel directly changed the outcome of the battle at Arnhem. So you can't do one without the other. You can do a perfectly fine Arnhem tour and then talk about what happened here, but to understand why Verticore never showed up, well, you need to zoom out and incorporate things that happened on the very first days, 60, 70 miles away at the Dutch border.
What I really like about your website, and I think most tourpreneurs do this, or we're motivated by this, is our passions. So, recently I spoke to a gentleman who runs ghost tours in Charleston. He's very passionate about that subject. And you are very passionate about the history here. And you say your goal is to share the history of Operation Market Garden so that the torch of remembrance is passed on to the next generation, which is a very worthy goal, Joris.
Thank you. Yeah. But it's my drive. It's telling and teaching and making sure that in 20 or 30 years time, people are still interested in what happened. And even though Operation Market Garden did not succeed, a large part of the Netherlands was liberated. And that was an interesting change, by the way. When I lived in Arnhem, it was a solemn remembrance of the lost battle. And it's all a bit gloomy. And then I moved to Veghel, and here it's Liberation Day. September 17th is the day of liberation. So that was and you just move across a river and 50 miles away from Arnhem. And then it's suddenly a liberation party instead of a remembrance of a lost cause, a lost battle.
Did you know every weekday Shane curates the most interesting news articles in tours and activities and sends them out in a snappy daily digest? Grab your copy of the Tourpreneur Daily Briefing at www.tourpreneur.com.
In Arnhem, when you walk around, you see little the tiles on the pavement. They are maroon every now and then. And when you find a maroon tile, then you're on a trail. You're on a trail that leads all the way through Arnhem. And at certain locations, these maroon tiles have a Pegasus on it, and that's where something really special happened. So in the pavement in Arnhem, you can follow the route of the airborne battle, even without a guide. So yes, they've done very well with the remembrance and to make sure that it's in everybody's face if you want to see it, of course.
So let's go back to you starting the tour. So you've got your first customers who've come through. What did it feel like? First of all, you meet them, you take them out. What was going through your mind? How did you feel when you were leading your first tour?
Well, very scared, hoping that you do a proper job. And it's a fine balance to figure out what their starting point is. And you have to put your story and tailor it to their starting point. Otherwise, it'll never sink in. You can take a 20-year-old kid and you can't really tell the same story to him as you do a veteran of one of the more recent wars like Iran or Iraq, because they have a different, they see the world differently. Yeah. So you need to tailor that. And that's something that was very difficult to learn, and you get the tendency to tell too much. You want to stuff the entire operation in your tour. So if you do an Arnhem tour, you want to cover every basis and tell everything that happened and make sure you leave nothing out. And you're just overwhelming your guests. And you need to find this balance between telling them a great story, telling them the historical facts, taking them on a journey, and leaving them some time to reflect during the tour as well on what you've been telling about. Yes. And the best way to know if you're doing a good job is if you get questions. I love questions. If you get questions, that means that they're listening. And if they're just nodding and there's no response other than that, then you need to tweak, you need to try a different approach or
would your advice to other tourpreneurs be, before you lead your tour, to talk to your guests, ask them what they want to learn, what they want to see, and then, you're aware of it? I mean, so I understand where you're coming from on this, especially because there's so much history with Market Garden and those battlefields. But how do you find out what they want to learn?
Usually in our email contact,
right
beforehand. And during the day, just in the morning when we start, we talk about why they go on this tour, and that'll give you a lot of information already.
Yeah. Did you have any challenges in terms of, and I'm not sure how this works in the Netherlands, permitting or licenses or insurance or any kind of government regulation? Did you have any challenges with that when you set up?
The government regulations with regards to being a guide, there are none. You don't need a permit. You don't need to do an exam. So that's very easy. There's no really any barriers, but you're driving people around usually in your own car. So you need to make sure that you've got proper insurance for that. And you definitely need a liability insurance. That's extremely important, because if someone falls and you don't have that organized and they break their legs, you end up paying for maybe the rest of your life. So, but when you got that sorted, you can just do whatever you want as a tour. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But there are groups, like in the Netherlands, there are a number of our tour guides who are part of the Liberation Route network, and we meet, and we also have the International Guild of Battlefield Guides, which is mostly centered around England, United Kingdom. And they have a validation program where you can enter, enroll, and then they help you in becoming a better tour guide.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they also help you in connecting with your peers. A guide is usually a bit of a lonely profession because you get to talk to your guests, but your colleagues, not so much. So it's a very important thing to connect with other guides as well, just to have some a way to talk about what you're doing. It's important.
Yeah, I agree. And that's actually one of the reasons why I set up Tourpreneur, because I can see it can be quite a lonely job when you're on your own. So through Tourpreneur, tour companies are listening in to you and your advice and your experiences, or it could be people who, they're passionate about something and they want to lead a tour, but they're scared to. And I'm hoping that the podcast will help people to make that decision to go for it. In terms of networking, would you consider, do you go to any industry events, any tourist events that are held in the Netherlands or in Europe? So for instance, Arrival is coming up in Berlin. Would you consider going to anything like that?
Yes, of course. We don't call each other rivals. Are the battlefield guides that I work with and I meet on a regular basis. We're colleagues, and we all have the same goal, the same passion, and that's World War II history. And we want to make sure that whatever guest is coming and to whichever guide he's going, that he has a very good experience.
Yeah.
And that is very important. And you see that when we get a message asking for a certain date and we're not available, then we pass that on internally to the other guides and say who's got time to do a certain tour. When someone comes to us, it means they are really interested in World War II history.
Yes.
And we want to give that person the best service we can, even though maybe I'm not the one who will do the tour, but then I know that someone else who is a good tour guide will.
Yeah, and this is something I hear, right across the world from tourpreneurs in all the different sectors that maybe they'll change in one episode. Maybe I'll hear a different story, but up to now, everyone's been very supportive and said the same thing. Mike, who we had on that leads the ghost tours, unfortunately he had a very nasty car accident, and he was able to hand over his bookings to Arrival, and they took care of his guests. There's not many industries where there is this kind of collaboration.
Yeah, I was surprised as well, and I was a bit. Of course, it's when you're with your peers, it's always a bit scary because you never know. Am I good enough? Do I do a good job? How do they do it? And you don't want to keep your cards too close to your hand. You need to be open and honest, and that can be scary at first, but. Like I said, we all have the same goal, and that's to talk about and teach the history of World War II.
Judging from your YouTube channel and from what I've read of you online and talking to you, I think what you have is that enthusiasm and a genuine, authentic enthusiasm. And I think that in the tourpreneur world, when you see even a competitor that's enthusiastic and passionate, it's hard not to like that person. Whereas, if the sincerity is not there and someone's just out to make a buck, you can really tell the difference, I think.
Yep. When someone's fake, it shows, and it doesn't really apply to just tour guides. It's everything, and you will see when someone's generally passionate about something, and when they're not, well, maybe they should look at something else. Yeah.
So you were saying that you had to fork out money for liability insurance, and there's wear and tear on the car. Did you use savings for this, or did you look for investment when you set up the tour guides? How did that look for you?
I just started off very small, couple of tours a year, and I'm still doing I'm a part-time tour guide. There is a lot of interest in World War II history in Market Garden as well, but there's not enough for a year-round business. Mm-hmm. So it still is a part-time job for me, and wear and tear and that things. Well, I use the car for other purposes as well.
Yeah, I'm just curious to learn then, how do you balance the tour? So you get your full-time job, and I know you're a family guy, you've got 3 children, so that's a full-time job in itself. How do you then manage, your everyday job with your availability to lead tours?
Well, my boss is I've got a great boss actually, and I don't work full time anymore. So that gives me a day in the week where I can do tours and prepare for them. And because a battlefield tour isn't just showing up and doing your things. People ask you questions beforehand that you need to respond to, and some people want something completely different than what you've done before, and that's interesting because telling the same story every time is sometimes difficult. So you need to prepare for your tours as well. And that's sometimes difficult. It makes for long days, but that's not an issue because it's fun. And it's what I want to do with my time, with my spare time. So it doesn't feel like working in that way, but it's not always easy to manage because it's a lot. It's basically 2 jobs that you're doing at the same time and a family. And there are some sacrifices that I have to make. And sometimes I have to say no. I can't do a tour then because it just won't fit in my family schedule. And that's what's a balancing act.
And I guess that's where having friends, competitors as friends helps, that you can give them the business. And I'm sure they give you business as well when they're unable to make, because if I understand correctly from your tours, most of them are full day tours, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So this isn't like get out for an hour and do a quick tour. This is the full day tour.
Yep. 9 to 6 usually. And it's something that needs proper planning. And that's an interesting facet of being a guide, because you take them along and they need a bathroom break and they want some coffee at some point and you need lunch. So it's all these things that you need to think about, and tours are dynamic. So when you spend some more time at a certain location, that means you have less on another, or you may have to take a different route because they need a bathroom break. So you're in your mind, in your head, you're always thinking of what's the next step? Where am I going? Do I need to go left or right? What's best for the tour at this time? How do we keep the flow? So even though I have a fixed schedule or a schedule in my head of what the tour will be, every tour is unique.
What's the best thing that's happened to you since you started the business?
Well, getting paid for my passion.
Right.
And people come to me and ask me to talk a full day about the subject that's most close to my heart, that I love to talk about. And then in the end of the day, they pay me for it. I mean, wow. How incredible is that? And you get to meet very interesting people from all over the world. And I've had serving soldiers, veterans, relatives, members of Congress from the States, and anywhere, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, England, America, and from France, Italy. So you touch people's lives for a day or two, and some people I still have as friends on Facebook with a tour that I've done 3-4 years ago, and we just connected, and I cherish that.
Yeah, I can hear the passion in your voice when you give that answer. And I think it's so refreshing to hear getting paid for doing something that you love, because as we know, there's a lot of people out there working jobs that they don't love. So it's fantastic to hear it when someone does. What's the craziest thing you think you've seen since you've been a tour guide, a tourpreneur?
The craziest thing I've seen, actually, I had a group not too long ago who 3 guys, and they were friends from across the world, and they met up and they wanted to do a battlefield tour as well. And then the moment they sat down in the car, the whole car began to fill with the smell of alcohol. So they were just sweating alcohol. And at the first stop, one of them got out and, did his thing. I was just so relieved he didn't do it in my car. But it was like a zombie tour because they were just so hungover that it was almost pointless to really talk. And it was a difficult tour to do, actually, because you need that interaction. You need to feel that you're understood, or you are just doubting yourself. Am I doing it wrong? Why are they not responding? I'm telling this is actually a good joke, or at least I think it's a good joke. Why everybody laughs, but now they don't? What? So it's you get insecure.
Did you raise it with them, or did you just think, well, they're just hungover guys and I'll carry on?
Yeah. At the end, I just thought, well, okay, just go and have a beer. And it was luckily it was a half-day tour, so it wasn't a full day of torture. But, these things happen. Not everybody is at the same page. And sometimes tours can be difficult. We had guys fall over and injure themselves and all sorts of stuff that happened. But usually you just take it in stride and march on and try and make the best of it.
I want to switch tracks a little bit and talk a bit more about marketing and sales. So you were saying how you got some of your business through Facebook and the website. How are you promoting your website to the world?
Mostly social media.
Okay.
So it's not just Facebook; it's also Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah.
And I've got following on all of them. And then the YouTube videos help as well. So it's all a bit connected and I don't use my page to actively promote my tours. Funny enough, it's there that I do battlefield tours, but I don't put a message up every other day saying I've got a battlefield tour. Please call me. And I just take a bit of a laid back approach. And for me, this works. I can't do tours 5-6 days a week.
Yeah.
So there's no need for me to go full on marketing. But I still am able to do multiple tours every month. And
I'm a huge fan of your YouTube channel. I think that's how I first discovered you, actually. So that definitely works in reaching me here. And I sent it to some friends of mine who have also an interest in market garden. They were like, I sent one of the clips over. I said, check this out. It was about one of the drop zones, I think with the 101st that you filmed. And they were like, has he got any more? Has he got any more? And they were devouring it. And I think it's so clever. Our last guest, he has a podcast where he talks about ghost tours and stories on his podcast. He doesn't overtly promote his ghost tours on there. And it seems like you're doing the same thing with your YouTube channel where, you're wanting to give this information out to people. And I love it because, I've got the whole map on my table and I've got the books here, but to actually see it with my own eyes on YouTube, video, we're very lucky in this day and age to have access to such material. I'm very grateful for people like you and all the other YouTubers that put the videos out there.
That's just great, and it makes you a better guide because you practice your the way you present your information.
So, what's your YouTube setup? So, let's say you're at Nijmegen Bridge, for instance. You want to take a video. What kind of just for other tourpreneurs out there who might want to have their own YouTube channel? What kind of equipment do you use to make your videos?
I'm using a DJI Osmo Plus, which is a 4K gimbal camera that I attach it to my phone. I've got a good microphone with it. And so your shots that you make are steady. I do the voiceover on location.
Right.
And I take about 15 million takes because I'm never happy. And then you talk and you realize, where am I going with this? And you stop and you do it again. And then in post-production, you still think I don't have enough takes. Why didn't I shoot this? Oh, I forgot that. I made a mistake there because, I want it to be perfect, but don't be afraid to fail, and then don't be afraid to just do it again and again and again until you're happy.
And I love this model of giving away a lot of content for free. So you're doing this through YouTube channel. Mike was doing it on his podcast. Other people do it via blogging. And I love it because, for me, I definitely want to come on an Arnhem tour sometime in the future. Like you say, you've got competitors, but I land on your YouTube channel. I watch a couple of you and this guy knows his stuff. This is the guy I'm going to book with, because you've given me all the information for free. And I think the lesson for tourpreneurs is that really helps with credibility, especially if you're in a really crowded sector.
Yes. Yeah. And you don't have to give away everything. Because I've done the video about the landings, and then a bit about the Recce reconnaissance squadron, which was ambushed close to the drop zones, and that's a story I use in my battlefield tours as well. But there's so much more, and you don't have to do everything online and give away everything. But even if you do, people will still want to experience it for themselves. They want to be on the ground with their feet in the dirt and look around and see it themselves.
Definitely.
And there's no substitute. In the end, there really is no substitute for just standing there and seeing it with your own eyes.
And what I would say as well, to be honest with you, as someone who consumes your content, it wouldn't annoy me if at the end you said, hey, if you're interested in a tour, I run tours, and go to my website or have it underneath. I think I like your approach of not being too salesy, but I think because the content you give is so valuable, I wouldn't object. I wouldn't see it as too salesy if you had some kind of promotion on there. The same thing with people who are running podcasts to promote their tours. I think it's only fair.
Yeah. Well, that's great feedback, and I may change my mind on it at some point. But
did you go for any training on that, or is it all self-taught and just learning by doing?
Look at what others do, looking at how people do it, and finding your own style with what you see. And I've not gone on a course or anything. It helps if you know a bit of video editing.
In terms of your website, how did that come about? Did you build it yourself or did you outsource it?
I built it myself. Yep. And WordPress, which is awesome and free, and started from there. I'm actually now trying out something new. I have no idea if it'll work. It's called Fair Harbor. Don't know if you heard of it.
Very much so. Yes, Fair Harbor.
And I'm going to try that on my site over the next few days and see how that works. It's a different approach from what I've been doing, because I've always just had people sending me a message, leaving me a message, and then I'd contact them, and then we discuss when I could do a tour and etc. So this is and then later on take payments on the day, which I don't recommend to anybody actually. And now I'm just going to try out, see how that works, and that's where people actually buy the tour immediately.
Yes.
They book on site. You put in your availability in a calendar, and people can just say click, buy, and you're getting paid up front, and they take care of a lot of hassle. Well, it remains to be seen if I really enjoy it, but it's one of those things I just try. You need to try new things.
Yeah, and if you listen to episode 1 and 2 of Tourpreneur, the three tourpreneurs are huge fans of Fair Harbor, and if I remember right, episode 1 they're using it for the booking platform to make the bookings and take the bookings, and then Jennifer in episode 2, she actually uses Fair Harbor to build her website, and I commend tourpreneurs doing that if they don't have the skills you have or the time, Joris, to make a website, because it's not easy to do it, because, that's your storefront, right? This isn't some school project. This is your storefront. It's got to look professional if people are going to hand over cash. So she used Fair Harbor to actually design their website. And I wasn't aware that they also offered that service as well. The other benefits, I think, of using Fair Harbor is your global distribution. I'm saying Fair Harbor here, and I want to be mindful that there are other providers out there as well. So let me just, through these players, your distribution is global, so they'll be able to promote it to all the different partners around the world. So you should see bookings coming in. I mean, just because of the nature of what you do, I understand, and a lot of American interest in Market Garden, but it will definitely increase your distribution.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, I'm not going to use it on my Dutch website. I got 2 separate sites. I used to have a multi-language site, but in the end, that's just a massive headache. Yeah. So I just built 2, twice as much work. But now I can differentiate between what I offer to the English-speaking customers and the Dutch-speaking customers. And there is a difference. The Dutch aren't inclined to pay online for a tour with a credit card. That's something that's not really in our nature. So I need to focus, make sure that I can have a user-friendly Dutch site as well at the same time.
And I guess for the Dutch, geographically, you've got a small country, so it's quite easy to get around. They can book that more last minute or nearer the time. But, if I was to fly over to come, I'd want to book you in advance because I don't want to not be able to get on your tour. I'm coming all that way and, I want your tour. So I will want to book it. So it's guaranteed and confirmed and we're ready to go rather than, a lot of times you'll turn up for a tour and it's full or sold out or not running that day. There's nothing worse than that. So I'm excited. Hopefully, maybe we can catch up, maybe this time next year, and you can share with our listeners your experience using FareHarbor as a first-time user, because one of the things I'm trying really hard to do on the podcast is to share your recommendations and your advice. And I will be bringing the experts on. I will be talking to FareHarbor at some point, as well as Bokken and all the others. But I love it when tourpreneurs talk about, your experience using these players rather than have someone come on to do a bit of a sales pitch.
Yeah, because you learn most from other people who have used it. And then it's genuine. And otherwise you'll never know if it's genuine or a sales pitch.
Definitely. How did you find out about FareHarbor?
Well, they called me. They picked up the phone and called me and said, hey, what you're doing is it looks great website. And we would like to invite you to take a look at FareHarbor. And I did. And I read the entire site twice and thinking, maybe this is something. And then I thought about it for a couple of weeks, actually. And it grew on me, thinking, it's a different approach to what I've been doing now. And I'm thinking, okay, how would I book a tour? I would personally use a FareHarbor-like solution where I can just pick a date that I want, pay up front, and no hassle.
Yes.
And what I've always done was having people fill out a form, send me a message, wait for me to come back. And then it's all a bit, it's not as straightforward. You want it to be as simple as buying a book or booking a movie. You want to do it online and you want to do it now. And you want to make sure that when 3 a.m. and my time is actually like 2 p.m. Somewhere else in the world. You don't want to wait till I wake up and look at my email and then reply. And, a lot of time is lost in that. And I can imagine people just saying, I want to book now, pay now, get it all over with, get it all sorted and go.
Did they talk to you about global distribution channels and promoting your tours on other websites?
Yes. Yep. They tie into booking.com and TripAdvisor. And I'm not sure how it works actually, because I didn't think I will learn how that works later. But I think you can now book a tour from TripAdvisor directly as well. And you don't have a contract. If you don't like it, you can just take it off and do it some other way. And they don't charge you up front. You don't pay a monthly fee. They just keep part of the credit card fee. That's how they make their money. So it all seems awesome. So that's why I decided to give it a go. It remains to be seen if I really like it and if it works. So it would be great in about a year that I'll be able to tell you, yes, this is awesome and it works. And I got so much more tours and it's so much easier for me because I don't have to go for all the hoops with PayPal invoices and everything.
No, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to catch up with you on it and see how that worked for you. And what I will say, because I am trying my hardest to be independent on the show, is if any of FareHarbor's competitors are listening to the show and you want me to speak to one of your customers who's a champion of yours, please drop me an email on tourpreneurshow@gmail.com. And I'm perfectly happy. It just happens this way that, the three guests early on are all FareHarbor users, or your case
going not being paid.
No, not at all. I want to make that really clear, but really interesting how you get on. So I guess I wanted to ask you, were there any books when you started out or even now, were there any books out there that inspire you other than the history books of Market Garden, of course, of which there are many? Were there any books that really helped you in developing and building your business?
Start with Why.
Start with Why. Do you know who writes that one?
I think it's Steven Sinek.
Okay. I will dig that out and I'll add it to our show notes today, which our listeners can find at tourpreneur.com/5. And that's Start with Why. You said you listen to books as well. So you recommend audiobooks to people?
Oh, yes. I drive to work every day, as do most people. And I listen to books every single day. So every time I'm in my car by myself, I listen to a book. If I go running, I listen to a book. And it's a great way and a very easy way to learn new things. Because you're driving anyway.
It really is. I'm a huge fan of audiobooks. It took me probably 4 to 6 weeks when I first started to get into it, because, you got to train your ear to listen. And I would be listening to a work of fiction and it would be, John Smith's funeral. I'm like, wait, when did he die? How did I miss that? So
that happens as well. And sometimes when something happens in traffic, you need to read to go back a bit in the book, because what you do is you just focus on driving, because that's more important, and you skip out anything else. If you focus on self-help books that'll teach you things like Start With Why, who will go into why people do things and why people buy things, and it's not what you do, it's why you do it that matters, is one of the key things of that book, and it helps you.
There's a book I recently read which might be of interest to you called Content Inc.
Mm-hmm.
How entrepreneurs use content to build massive audiences and create radically successful businesses, by a guy called Joe Paluzzi. And I would say the first half of it I found really useful. It's about, you have specialist knowledge, which you clearly do on your subject, and how you can turn that into content to gain followers and build an audience. And you're already doing so much of it with the blogging, the articles, and the YouTube channel. But this was one that I really enjoyed listening to, so much so I went out and bought the hardback book. And I'll add a link to that as well in the show notes at tourpreneur.com.
Never miss an episode of the show. Subscribe at tourpreneur.com/subscribe.
Are you ready for the quickfire round?
Sure.
Great. What was the last tour you experienced?
That was 2 weeks ago in Belfast, where I was on a tour of the murals. Took us to the Protestant areas and the Catholic areas, and we got 2 different tour guides, which was simply mind-boggling, because one of them told it from the Protestant perspective, and the other told it all from the Catholic perspective. And being a battlefield guide, I'm used to my stories being 70 years old, and the wounds have mostly healed, and we've gone into forgiveness mode, and we bring in the Germans for the commemorations on certain areas. But there it's all so raw, and it's so different from what I've been doing. And that was really, it took me a while to, and maybe I'm still working, maybe I'm still reflecting on that tour, because it was a battlefield tour in my world. And everything is there, and it's now, and it happened less than 20 years ago. But that was a really great experience. Maybe it's not the way to say it. A great experience and battlefield guide and tours don't really match, but maybe they do.
Where did you find that tour? Was it online, or how did you find those guys?
The bed and breakfast that we stayed in, they had a leaflet, a flyer.
Wow. Old school tactics still work. Look at that.
Yeah. And they gave us a bunch of new flyers to put in the house, because the old ones were a bit, tattered. And they said, here's some more. And if you can put them in the house. So that works. That definitely works. Yes. Get a good designer and get some flyers, and don't be cheap when it comes to that.
What famous person would you most like to have dinner with?
But for tourpreneurs, maybe the guy from Virgin,
Mr. Branson.
Mr. Branson, because he's a master at what he does.
Really is, yeah.
And
really is.
I think he can be so inspirational in the way he built up everything, because he had nothing when he started, and now he's super duper rich. And that's not my goal, actually. My goal isn't to be a very rich tour guide. My goal is just to be a tour guide. But I would be interesting to learn how he does things. And
He's written a couple of good books that you can get on Audible as well. I'll listen to a few. And I think what comes across to me is what you said earlier on about, you can tell that Branson is very passionate about all his businesses, and he doesn't just jump into anything to make a ton of money. He has that interest there, whether it's the Virgin Galactic or even trains, and also his work for, in society, his work for charities and voluntary organizations is pretty incredible. So who would you like us to interview next on Tourpreneur? Who would you like to hear us talk with on a future episode of the show?
I would go for a battlefield guide, but maybe someone from a different age. And I mean that by a totally different battle, to go into the medieval times, the castles in England and Scotland, and that whole war that has been fought there. It's so different from what World War II. And I've never been on a tour like that. And it would fascinate me to know and to go to England and be a spectator on a tour like that.
Excellent. Well, we'll look into that, and that will definitely feature on a future episode of the show. Joris, thank you so much for giving us, an hour or so of your really valuable time. Love all the knowledge you've shared with us today, and I know our listeners will get a lot out of, the tips you've shared, the stories you've shared, and will really help them to make their businesses even better.
Yep, and shoot me an email if you need anything. Maybe I can help you, maybe I can't, but don't be afraid to ask and reach out, because people usually want to help you and genuinely want to help you, and you don't need to fear asking a question.
Dank u wel.
Graag gedaan. You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Tourpreneur Podcast. Be sure to visit tourpreneur.com to join the conversation and access the show notes, including links to the resources mentioned on today's episode. This is Tourpreneur.